Welcome to the GritIron Show with Whitney Breaux, a weekly podcast where we celebrate the perseverance, passion, and lifestyle of women on and off the field. The GritIron Show with Whitney Breaux is a part of the CJC Media Network.
Welcome back, everybody, to the GritIron Show. I'm your host, Whitney Breaux, and we're here for another great episode where we're looking to inspire and motivate and celebrate women that are breaking glass ceilings everywhere. So you better watch your step, fellas and ladies out there. Don't forget to check out one of my favorite shops. You can find them at shophkyle.com. I'm sporting today their signature I Will Not Be Shaken t-shirt, which you can find online at shophkyle.com and at shophkyle on Instagram and on Twitter. And our next guest, you better believe she will not ever be shaken. She's someone that I've looked up to for a long time, and I'm so grateful that she said yes to being here with us today on the GritIron Show. Please welcome VP of Communications and PR with America 250 Foundation, Keri Potts. Hi, Keri. How you doing? Welcome to the GritIron Show.
Hey, I am excited to be here. So glad you reached out.
Thank you so much. I mean, a Twitter DM, and look at where we are here today. And it's because you said yes. And like I said before, thank you so much for doing that. So, I mean, Keri, you've had an amazing career. I mean, from where you've started to where you are now with the America 250 Foundation. For folks that may not be like me, who have followed your career quite closely, tell us a little bit more about your journey and what's brought you to where you are today.
Well, I always say it started with me doing acrobatics when I was 2 in my parents' backyard, unofficially. And unofficially, as in climbing over the fence and escaping, and being put into my first, sports activity and progressing as an athlete, and having great success, and just kind of the lifestyle in the people I was around, what training does for you on a emotional and physical level. And so I played sports all through school and got a scholarship to Syracuse to play volleyball. That was my love. My great love was volleyball. And then my first job was the NCAA, working in sports. And so ESPN was a natural stop as well. And those two jobs comprised, more than 2 decades, really of work experience. And finally, I kind of made a shift towards the nonprofit sector where you find me now. But it was, I always say the athlete never leaves you. So I don't feel like just because I'm not in sports for my job, that I'm any less sporty.
You still keep it with you. That tenacity, that yearn for competition still exists in anyone that's got that competitive spirit.
It is, and it's still who I gravitate toward. People have a shared experience, and just always committed to making sure I'm participating in some way in sport, whether it's watching, doing, or talking about.
I always say one of my favorite quotes from the movie Grease: if you can't be an athlete, be an athletic supporter. Because
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's a great quote.
I love that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the athletic supporter, because although I might look like I can do something, I can't. I mean, it's just, I played the harp growing up. That was like my talent and skill. But
I love it.
I always say harpists are the closest thing that you'll find to angels on earth. And my mom likes to still think that that's true, but we'll see. But you share with us like a little bit about growing up and as an athlete and playing volleyball at Syracuse. When you reflect back on the lessons that you learned from participating in sports and what you learned from, wanting to be the best and competing at a high level, what do you look back on that you still bring with you, those transferable skills that you still use today?
Well, I can say this. I often reference this, but before I played volleyball, I was a gymnast. As I mentioned, pretty good acrobat, and was competing, and the kind of competing where you're going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, and you're little, and that when you are practicing your routine, your coach says, "I want 20 reps of your routine. I'll see you. Come back in an hour or something. So you're doing beam that day." There's no one breathing over your neck. It's just you, and it's you striving for perfection, you being completely honest with yourself, knowing, I didn't hit that right. I got to go back and do that. Right. So it teaches you that, like, you can't fool yourself. That will not get you nowhere.
No.
If you don't literally do the reps, strive to do exactly what you need to do to get that done, you don't count the reps, right? It just doesn't count. And so kind of that self-awareness and that holding yourself accountable. And I'm not saying that that's musicians don't go through that.
Sure.
Anyone who's really dedicated to something, I mean, those are all things that we share. I do think the element of physicality, though, as well, like getting the mind and your arms or your feet or your toes to work, is just, there's a kind of a complex level to it. And it's something that, when everything works together, it's such a high, there's such euphoria to it. Yeah. And I think that just carries on. So you have a positive association with being accountable, with working to completion. And those are things that, they don't go away. And those are very good lessons, right? Also just teaching you that you can endure beyond what you think you can, which has served me in many aspects of my life as well. And so however someone can get that lesson, I encourage it. So I say to people, put your kid in sport before it ruins their body.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get out of gymnastics soon enough. I was growing too fast, and that sport was brutal for someone growing as fast as I am. But it teaches you all that kind, especially in an individual sport. You basically have to be honest with yourself, right? Yeah. And a lot of it is spent you just working on your routines by yourself. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan.
And getting better, we like to say 1% better each and every day. And then as you transition from like gymnastics into a team sport like volleyball and in being a student athlete, I mean, the juggling of the schedule and all of the training and the competition. Yeah. I mean, teamwork, though, is also an important piece to that. I mean, when you think back on your time at Syracuse, what are some of the things that maybe you bring forward into the teams that you lead and that you work with now?
I think the team transition was difficult for me because I was responsible for myself. And when you go to a team, you're all each responsible to each other. And as anyone who's been on a team knows, not everybody sees it that way.
Yep.
So you learn your what's possible is, like they say, you're as strong as your weakest link kind of thing. And so, what you learn in the team environment is you may have been successful in approaching work or practice one way, but if you want to get that other person rowing the same direction, you have to be more versatile than that. You have to be flexible. What are the words or the actions that get them to want to comply, that want to contribute, and it's not a negative experience, right? And I think that really carries into leading a team. It's accepting that however you get there, it's okay if everyone does it a little different, right? As long as you're getting to where you all want to go. And it's not easy. It really, a team was, again, I was only focused on myself. In fact, being a gymnast really kept me from doing a lot of the social stuff, going through a lot of the social drama that happens as you're fighting your way through the different grades and friend circles. And then getting on a team, it's a lot of dynamics. And so it's quite a good education. It's different than a social circle. Sure. Because you're working towards something that you're all uniformly predetermined that's what you want to be doing, right? If you're going to be on a team, you're going to want to win games. Usually, I think that would be assumed. When you're at a tournament, you're going to want to beat the teams. And so there's this level of like, okay, we all agree, but how do we get there? And who's got the best idea? And how do you persuade people? Because there's, I'm a strong personality, but I wasn't the only one on the team, right?
Right.
And so how do you lead? How do you know when to be deferential? All those kinds of things that, we carry into the workplace for sure.
And there's a beauty, like you said, in finding the best idea, which comes from having a diverse team and then creating an inclusive environment so that the team can, like you said, so that we can win, so that we can achieve those goals. And I mean, you achieved so many goals in your 20 years that you've now spent working for multinational companies, both within sports and in entertainment. But you've also had if I look at the years that you spent, like you said, with the NCAA and then then with ESPN, you really had an up close front row seat to seeing some of the important evolutions and changes that have happened in sports as it relates to women and the role that women play. I mean, whenever you think back on that, and what was something that maybe that comes to mind that you think back and like say, man, I'm so glad that I was there to watch and see that happen?
Well, it's funny. I'm taking a course right now on gender mainstreaming, which is about, creating policy and implementing it in a way that it takes into account these experiences, of women and girls and men and boys. And that's more in an international context. But what really is a theme that we've all experienced, no matter who is in that class. And I have people in the UN and in Nepal and Jerusalem. I'm the only American in the class. We're talking about what it took to get an organization to want to be more gender inclusive, want to strive toward gender equality, the advancement of women and girls, whatever aspect of that. I would love to say it was, from wanting to be, aspirational, but the launch of the SPNW was very much tapping into, an ad sales side of the business that we could never get with just our regular, mostly male programming, right? There's this whole reach of women that are sports fans that weren't being spoken to, but it was also this business opportunity. And whenever you can tie something to business, make the business case, it's a win. Right now, you and I know, like, oh, hey, maybe you tap into half your population, women, for ideas. Maybe you diversify your leadership team, because all studies point that diversifying any leadership group, any company has better business results, right? So the minute the business case started getting made in sports is when you started seeing money put behind it. And you're still seeing it now. But again, there's such a lag that you're supposed to be kind of happy with, the kind of half measures kind of thing. And yet I feel like I was glad to be a part of that, even though it was brutal entering the male space, launching that brand, ESPNW. There was such backlash to it. But I'm just glad that we did that we were the first ones to really do that on that scale, and for a company as meaningful and influential as ESPN.
Absolutely. And you set a foundation, and you provided a forum for then us to arrive in places where we are today. We're together recently that launched, and you're seeing more platforms, more mediums come out. And it's so refreshing and so exciting, because it's a true signal that women have a role and a voice in sports. And watch out, fellas, because, we're doing great and amazing things, and those stories need to be told. And ESPNW, to your point, was one of the first platforms that allowed women to do that.
Well, yes, absolutely. Like I said, ESPN is it's a cutting edge business. They're always their biggest asset has been the ability to anticipate. They get the creative thinkers and take risks and, create something like the ESPN phone and realize we have no business being in the phone, but creating mobile content is definitely a next business for us, right? So that's what, I remember when that happened. And it became mobile content creators and led in that. So, yes, it was an exciting time. What I can say is, and this is the truth, and I know you know this, it's a choice.
Yes.
If tomorrow every owner of a pro sports team or all people who control large amounts of money decided that there will be a volleyball league and a women's, pro softball league, and pay at the scale and invest the dollars that they did with, like Atlanta did for its soccer, United team in a community that didn't have one, and it sells out every year. It would happen tomorrow.
Absolutely.
It literally would. It's this choice of trying to perpetually convincing actually people who don't have the money, convincing the populace to put the pressure to get the dollars, which is a slower burn. But I do find, still, we've made a lot of progress, but it's still this choice of just deciding not to put the dollars where they should go. And there's no good excuse for it.
Not anymore. Not anymore. No, there's glass everywhere. So just come on, put your big boy shoes on and let's go.
Let's just go. What are you waiting for? And all positive things come out of it.
Absolutely.
when women are playing, it's just so important. We're so far behind in equity, even at that level, just that where women are represented, from all spectrums of our society. And so, yeah, it was a positive, but I think we should be farther ahead. I do think there's momentum, though, the last year or two. And I think part of it, too, is when you look at how the WNBA really led a lot of the social justice movement this summer, but has always been. It's not just this summer, And U.S. soccer, very vocal, but unapologetic. And, like, refusing, like, literally not like, oh, hey, maybe we'd like for you to watch us. It's like, oh, we are so kick-ass.
You better watch.
Yeah, you better. It's what the cool people, like, that attitude adjustment, that sense of a right. It is my right to be here. I don't have to sit here and beg and thank you and please. Like, that's the shift. Yep. That's the shift. So I am hopeful.
And that's what we're hoping to highlight on the GritIron Show. We're trying to create a platform and a medium to share these personal stories for amazing women that have an association in sports. And so we're hoping to be a part of the groundswell to continue to push the narrative and the conversation, because we do think that it's important. And honestly, when I think about talking to my girlfriends and friends and of kids' friends and all of that, they want this type of information. They want this conversation, and something that's specifically tailored to us and to what we're experiencing each and every day. And it makes me think about, Keri, the story that I followed and the information that you've put out there and the focus that you've had on your nonprofit and your organization, A Fight Back Woman. I mean, talk about fighting back. I mean, tell our listeners a little bit more about how that came to be and the story that contributed to it.
Sure, gladly. I was actually assaulted on vacation in Rome in 2008. Like a local citizen, he tried very hard to complete his assault and to, harm me beyond that. And I had this very dramatic escape and fist fight with him and all these things. Very, very proud of myself. I was able to get away and to press charges. And, the scene that kept coming in my head during my escape from him that night, during my questioning at the police station for 14 hours, during all the parts of a international assault trial where you're really going it alone because there's no one really in the States that knows what you're going through or can even guide you. It was the refrain as an athlete of, Keri, keep going, you've got this, keep going, keep going. Like the things you say to yourself when your legs are burning and you don't think you can take, one more dig in a game that's like a marathon, that where you're trying to will yourself through something. And so that to me was, and I was keeping my job, I was working full time, launching 30 for 30, massive undertaking, high pressure. So I was really just digging in, head down, and doing everything I possibly could to help myself to get justice. And the pursuit of that was much like the pursuit of anything. You're trying to, like in sport, you're trying to get to the next level on something. So, and it felt like a fight. It felt like an ongoing battle. And I felt like I was fighting every day to keep my chin up. The case is, it's very difficult across the ocean with a different lawyer who's in Italy and you're not. And just a lot of twists and turns. But that if someone said to me, at the time, the word survivor wasn't in the lexicon like it is now. This is 2008. Calling yourself a victim is what I would still say. I was a victim of a crime. Like, I don't associate anything negative with that. But I would say I was fighting back. And I said, I'm fighting back. I'm fighting back. And so that's where that came from. I said, I'm a fight back woman. I'm going to fight this guy. I'm going to fight this system and fight for myself. Yes. And so that's where it came from. And it just stuck. And so I received trainings and certifications as a rape crisis counselor, as a victims advocate throughout the years since. And I speak around the country, and I speak to everywhere from athletic teams to organizations, companies, on some of the lessons, and then, some of the ways that we can talk about sexual assault responsibly, some ways to help make themselves feel more educated about it, less fear, because it's a topic that is just shrouded in fear. So that's what I do on the side. And in some way, my identity in the sports world kind of became wrapped in that. And I'm proud of that, because I think people, especially men, need to see that I don't feel shame. I am present. Yes. I am not going to hide from this thing. I'm going to use it as an education point. I'm going to use it as a way for other women to feel like they have an ally, maybe if they haven't told anyone. And I can tell you, for years, hundreds of women came up to me. They would find me at any event, people you would never think, people you've never seen before, like find me and, tell me for maybe the first time they've never told anyone, and, thank me or ask me for advice or whatever. And even men, writers in sports, how do I write about this? I'm really concerned. Right. And then obviously I helped guide ESPN for the last probably 3 years I was there, with how we report on it and talk about it responsibly. So yeah, it became a big part of my life, and yet didn't separate me from sport.
Right. And a fight back woman you are, but there was something specific on your website that really resonated with me that I wanted to just ask you for more of your thoughts on. When you said, I want to be the change. Yeah. Being a part of the change. Tell us a little bit more about, where does that come from inside of you that says, you know what, I'm not just going to take what has happened to me and, be quiet or be silent about it, but I'm going to be a part of actually changing the narrative?
Because I had I wrote about it on the site. I had this very unusual moment. A few things happened when I was escaping that were just so, you could say coincidence, but it was just, it felt different than that. It felt like the universe speaking to me. It was just like, unless you go through it, it's hard to explain to people, but there was this very specific moment where everything just clicked. And I remember feeling very calm and thinking, oh, I'm supposed to sound the alarm on this. I'm supposed to tell people what this is like, this entire experience, how these women and men who are assaulted overseas slip through the cracks when they come back to our country, how our country doesn't have services for them, how the one, organization that does have services, just had them stripped this last administration. There was a lot of cutting of funds to sexual assault and violence against women. And so it was really important to me to continue, even when I felt like, oh, this is an uphill struggle getting people to care, right? People are real easy about caring about things that are non-controversial, like sick kids, animals, right? I mean, it's really,
those are the easy ones. Yeah. Not the easy ones.
Sick or hurt. Right. You know what I mean? It's like a no-brainer. Of course, I don't want these children to be sick, of course. But when you talk about sexual assault, then people get all sorts of weird. They get all sorts of, it's wrapped up in just family stuff, religion, you just name it, cultural, But in that moment, I said, no, I know what I know. I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I did it. I mean, the thing is, I did it. I was public. I didn't shy away from it at work. I tell people and put myself out there and say, let me be a resource. And so, I had the commitment to it like anything else. And people lived, the world went on. I still succeeded. People still treated me respectfully. I was still professional, and so I think I wanted to say to people, that you can be both. It doesn't define you, but it's also something that's so shameful you have to hide. I just never felt the shame. I was go ahead and tell me I did something wrong. Go ahead. I dare you.
Bring it on.
I didn't ever let that be something people could throw at me. And then they respond accordingly in a way. I mean, I'm not privy to their private thoughts, but that's none of my business. Right. What was important to me is how I existed in my job. And I think I wouldn't change a thing at all, because to be able to be that for some young woman or young man, older women, the range, and you connect with them on a different level, it really helped me then be more cognizant of the power of my words about any range of topics. You never know who's next to you, what they've been through. And it's shocking to me, the number of men, especially, that'll talk to me about or a case they see in the news, thinking I'm the only one at the table that knows about the subject personally. You know, like this complete oblivion. Like there's only one of us in a room.
Not even possible.
That's impossible.
Not even possible.
Yeah, it's, you know, but so, you know, it's just taught me to be better about things in my life that I need to be more careful about, you know, that I need to be more thoughtful about. You know, we can all do better for that.
Absolutely. And it's like you take an experience that maybe was hard or was difficult for you, but whenever you find that grit, I hate to use the word again, but when you find that inside of you, it unleashes something that, like you said, you almost have this infinite capacity. I mean, it happened for me with my cancer diagnosis. I mean, I was angry and frustrated, and I'm like, how does this happen at 32? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to shave my head live on Instagram, and I'm going to be open about this because I want girls to feel their boobs up a bit more often because I wasn't doing it, you know?
But you took your power back in a way. There's something very powerful about it. There was a way of, like, I had lost my agency briefly. My body was a crime scene. And it was, you know, photographed and explored and, you know, by strangers. So you feel kind of dispossessed of yourself. So I do say it's grit because, to me, grit is, it's not linear. It's you have starts and stops, and can I do this? Oh my God, I can't get through this. Oh my God, I just got through that. It's you know, this just kind of persistent march forward, just one foot in front of the other. You know, it's a battle of inches, is how it felt sometimes. And I also wrote in my blog, it's one of the things that it's very hard for me to read sometimes, but I talk about how I learned to cry in the shower, because I lived in an old Hoboken apartment. You could hear everything through the walls, and I had such grief and anger, and I would wake up and think, you know, you think in the shower a lot, and I had such anxiety, and I would just cry in a corner with like that open mouth, but nothing came out but air. And, you know, there's a moment you say, well, I can't believe I taught myself how to do that. It's heartbreaking to me that I was going through that, you know, so to come out the other side of it absolutely is, you know, it exemplifies grit, and for what you went through, and that you're here and you're contributing and thinking how to advance others. Yeah, it's just awesome. And and that's, I think when we say grit, we have a positive association. It denotes that there's, through the fire, there's something good that comes of it.
No doubt. And something better comes from it too. And I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself as you're describing this experience and how it impacted you emotionally, physically, mentally, psychologically. And I mean, you just threw out there, like in the middle of it, that, you know, ESPN was launching 30 for 30 at the same time. I mean, when going back into those moments where we now look at 30 for 30, I mean, this is a big thing that now, you know, we sit at home and we wait for the next release of it. What were those early moments like as you guys were working together as a team to get 30 for 30 off the ground?
Those moments were, it was, you know, for a company that's stick and ball and like 98% live sports, it was the culmination of, you know, the ESPN Original Entertainment Division, which I'm sure you would remember some of those shows like Dream Job and World Series of Poker, but had been growing and changing quite rapidly from what the content was. So it used to be just like acquired programs, and then we were doing reality live shows, and then like acquiring documentaries, then we were doing scripted. Like, it was changing every year or two to some other genre, right? We hadn't even perfected scripted, and now we're off into documentaries. You know, we hadn't perfected reality, and we're off into something else. So it was just so fast and furious, which was really kind of the way that Mark Shapiro's brain works, you know, that kind of creative genius, but at breakneck speed. And so 30
We're just trying to keep up. We're just trying to keep up.
You know, and then, you know, you've got two brilliant people in Connor Schell and, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on his name from Boston. Oh my God. I can't even think of it. Anyhow, he's a co-creator. I sound Bill Simmons. There we go. I want to say Bill. I know I did not want to say this other Bill, but yeah, Bill Simmons. And, you know, so ambitious. I just remember sitting in the meeting being like, so 6 films in a row, like 6 weeks of films, 1 per week. Then they're like, and then we're going to do a 3-month break. Then we're going to do 8 in a row. Then we're going to like, it's like they had not taken PR into account at all.
They're like, put PR in the room as soon as possible. We just figured this thing out.
Yeah, I'm like, how am I going to get to seeing, like, we were having, people were looking to cover us as content creators for film.
Sure.
That was HBO's space. Right. So it's not like we had this cadre of media, like breathless, to be getting 6 and 8 screeners that they have to, that's 8 hours you're asking them to watch and review.
It's a lot.
You're going to the same people. It's not like it was so diverse that I could hit one writer and go to a different writer. Yes, there was different subjects, but there's still film reviewers at the New York Times. There's still entertainment. Like, there's only one guy. So yeah, I remember being attacked and coming back and finding refuge in the all-consuming nature of that lead up to that launch in September of 2009. So I was attacked November 2008. And I had so much purpose in it that I would go to work and not think about what was going on in my personal life. And that was, I needed that. I needed my brain. I will run something over the energy. It's like me, like a hamster on a hamster wheel. That's what it felt like. I could just turn something inside out, over, under, if I had nothing else to focus on. So it was a blessing, but at the same time, I felt so grateful to the company for helping me with so many aspects of, just whether it was taking time off to go to the embassy if I had to, or flying back over to Italy in the middle of a week, that I was trying to be perfect. I was trying to be so perfect about launching 30 for 30. I was trying to pay them back by making it the most perfect, wonderful, widely covered thing we ever did. And so I started to become really, really skinny. Like the clothes were just falling off me. Because I was just living on cortisol, just firing through me. It was just fight or flight for like 8 or 9 months. And I do remember a coworker saying, you look great. And I'm like, she's like, what's your secret? And I was like, well, desperation and fear and terror. Like,
no. That's not a diet. That's not a diet.
Yeah, I just looked at her going, I can't believe women reward women, because I'm an 8 and I was a 0.
Oh no.
And I was like,
that's a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing good about it. I was so gaunt. And anyone who knows me knew that there was something not right, but was afraid to ask. And maybe that was her open, but she was, you look great. And I was like, I know I look like a skeleton. Like,
what are you watching? What are you seeing?
Right. So I remember even being like, I'm too tired to deal with whatever body image you're having, lady. Like, I can't. Like, that's a you thing, because, like,
I'm going to let you handle that one. I'm going to let you deal with that one.
Seriously, I was just over. But, it was I knew I was being a part of something that was historic for the company. And, it was like being in a playground where everything was new to me. My relationships were new with people. I was outlets we'd never worked with. I was going to Toronto Film Festival, going to Sundance several years. Tribeca, running those carpets, and we had the big Tribeca Film Festival. Like, it was just a totally different world that not a lot of people at ESPN got to be in at that time, and I felt very fortunate, and I also felt very responsible to them. And so, just like anyone, people go through divorces and they have children or whatever. Like, there are like painful, deeply painful things people, and they show up for work.
They do.
And I realized I was just one of those. Like, they're suffering, mine isn't any worse than theirs. Mine's not any better. And it just gave me what I was saying to you. I recognize I have no idea what's going on with people around me. I'm not privy to the suffering they're going through. We all just put our faces on when we go to work. And I was, I had my moments where I was pretty salty, or I'd have been real feisty for a few months, really on edge. When I see someone like that, I kind of just assume now that they're going through something personal, and it makes me kinder. It made me such a kinder person and more empathetic. And I'm not saying that's the best route to get there. It is not. But all of us go through things. We are not unscathed at a certain point in our lives. We each have a tragedy. And I think I got the most lessons out of it that I could.
A tragedy and a triumph, and history with 30 for 30 to making history as in your new role, where you're going to be helping all of us. I mean, nationwide celebrate. Now, I couldn't even say it. Semi-cis question. I see it wasn't even worth it. Say it for me.
Semi-quincentennial.
I couldn't even do it. 250th anniversary of America. So tell us about the exciting journey that you're going to be on over the next couple of years in preparing all of us for July 4th, 2026.
Absolutely. I'm super psyched about this. So the Semi-Quincentennial Commission was appointed by Congress to ramp up the celebrations and, or different programs that will mark America's 250th anniversary in 2026. So there was that big bicentennial celebration that happened before I was born, but people still talk about. And in this way, it's sort of like when you think of like an Olympic host committee, like say a city gets a bid 8 years out and then you start hearing about it, your community, then there's events, and then there's like, sponsors, and like, all the things, ramp up to the big event, the big date of launch or whatever. So that's sort of in that spirit. But it's really a way to engage. We say this is for all 350 million Americans. Like we need all of them involved and interested. So engage them, ask their ideas, educate them on maybe parts of our history or, cultures. What do I know about the Northwest? Not a lot. I've lived in the Northeast and the South my whole life, there's things I don't have a knowledge of. So what could I learn? How could I connect? How do we find out where we're from or our past? And really unite everybody. And in a way that we always tend to do, we go, we almost feels like we fall apart and then we build back together. Yeah. And so I think I'm excited about this more than anything from a personal level, because I want to feel that way. I want to get back to feeling united and feeling really hopeful more than I had. And I also think that it's going to be really, really exciting for the youth, young people, trying to get them back involved with civics engagement, understanding how our country works, all the things that every generation has this fight. If you look back through the newspapers, like in the 60s, it was the same conversation. People don't understand how our government works. They don't know what the Declaration, all those kinds of things. And then every generation, there's this like massive unifying something that happens. And, in a way, we're going through that right now. We've all been in this year of like, what even happened? I think that euphoria when we finally feel like we can take a deep breath, that this is past, that the main worry has passed, just trying to replicate that feeling on a really grand scale, and just, celebrating, marking what a young country we are and what a consequential country we are.
Amen to that. I mean, whether we're going to be celebrating the America 250th anniversary, or bringing people together on the GritIron Show, we're celebrating unity. And Keri, you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and to share your story and to allow us to let other people hear your story and be motivated and inspired by it. Again, thank you so much for joining us on the GritIron Show. Keri Potts, VP of Communications and Public Relations with America 250 Foundation. Keri, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
It's my privilege. Thank you for having me.